Now all what matters is what God thinks about Nixon. Doesn't matter what paper thinks, Washington Post think about him, what New York Times think about him, what political parties think about him, what the Congress think about him. After he is buried, all what matters is what God thinks about him. I hope this thought will grip our hearts. What is the purpose of our life? Is to please the Lord. These two women, ordinary women, they were told to kill all the male children. They said, no. Fear of God gave them the right conviction. Fear of God gave them the good courage. And fear of God gave them the right motive. They had the right motive to please the Lord. One more thing I see in their life is sacrifice. When they took the decision not to kill the male children, they were putting their life at risk. Egyptian Pharaoh could have killed them immediately. In other words, they were willing to give their life for the right cause, for life. To preserve life, these women were willing to give their life. And I think you can rightly call it sacrifice. This word is not also very familiar these days. Nobody wants to sacrifice anything. It's a generation where we want to get everything. We don't want to sacrifice. Good leadership needs sacrifice. Good family needs sacrifice. Good work needs sacrifice. Anything profitable needs sacrifice. These women, for the right cause, the right conviction, they were willing to give their own life. Let us apply it to our own lives. We want to be a blessing to our family, our children, next generation, to people around. Do we have the conviction? Do we have the courage? Do we have the right motive? Above all, are we willing to sacrifice? You know, there are people who gave up their career to bless their children well. Maybe they were not able to give their children the best of the things of the world. But they sacrificed their career so that they can give their children good time. Their children were blessed. How often we want to preserve our own things. Some people sacrifice their promotion. I know for sure one man who was promoted, but he said, no, I don't want the promotion. If I am promoted, I will not be able to give my children time, my family time. He said, my priority is my family. So he was willing to sacrifice. How often we sacrifice our time with the children for the things of the world. You know, even if we go for a smaller house, giving time to the children will be more of a blessing. When you leave, we leave the home or the house behind, the car behind, the possessions behind. If we can leave behind living children, living to please God, that will be a greater blessing. Many people who went for a smaller house, smaller car, smaller possession, just because they wanted to give time, priority for greater things. I know mothers who sacrifice their sleep so that they can pray more. Their sacrifice will never go waste. Just like through two midwives, as they were willing to sacrifice their life, I think God is looking for women who are willing to give their time, their resources to be a blessing to others. My mother always got up at 4 a.m. I know because I lived with her. Prayed for a long time. Even at the age of 92, after 92, she could not do it. She always got up at 4 a.m. to pray. The sacrifice of her time, when I look back, it's never a waste. So God is asking us this morning, are we willing to sacrifice? You ask Timothy, as we see in the scriptures, New Testament, his grandmother and his mother, they were able to transfer their faith because they were willing to sacrifice. We are all familiar with the name Saint Augustine. Many of us know he lived a wayward life. But his mother faithfully, consistently continued to pray, shed tears before the Lord. After some time, one of the bishops met her and said, Monica, a child so much prayed for will never be abandoned by God. If you have prayed for her, surely it will bring results. So this morning, as we think about these women, God's question is directly to each one of us. As we apply it today, as we think about the women in the church, the question to you is, are you willing to sacrifice? You want to have a blessing? Sacrifice. So they were able to bless the nation. See how God returned their blessing, verse 20. God blessed them. God dealt well with them, as we read in New King James Version. God blessed them. And also we read in the next verse that God blessed their families. This morning, as we meditate upon the word, just like these two women, let us fear God. Fear of God will always bring great reward in our life. Even in the lives of these two women. True fear of God gave them the conviction what is right and wrong. That gave them the courage to do what was right. And they were given the right motive. And they were willing to sacrifice. And that brought blessing to the next generation. I know a young man who plays well the keyboard. If I can graphically say, his fingers dance on the keyboard. Plays it very nicely. But I can also remember the mother who carried that keyboard in her arms, walked 2 miles, maybe about 3 miles to school. Every week once. It's not easy in the hot sun of Indian climate. I still remember. She carried that long keyboard, not in a vehicle, she carried on her shoulders, on straps. Every week once to the school. That was hard. But I can see her son. Blessing. Beautifully play. Every sacrifice will bring blessing. We want to bless the next generation. Fear the Lord. Have the good conviction. Have the courage from the Lord. Have the right motive. Be willing to sacrifice. Are we willing to say no and be different? These two women resisted the king to do what was right. God bless them. I pray that this morning, many of us, not only women, men who are listening to the word, will take that bold step and say, Lord, I want to fear you and do what is right. Give me the courage, give me the right motive, and help me to sacrifice so that people around me will be blessed. When we bless others, God blesses us too. May the Lord bless the word for us.